They called it the Laughing Island in Tradecraft Briefs, a private peninsula where power and secrecy had danced for decades. By the time the Mossad team slipped through the black water toward the private quay, it was a half-remembered rumor, an address where other people's secrets were kept like trophies. Tonight the trophies had to be taken. Rimmon peered through the rebreather mask, the lights of the mainland a faint smear behind the low swell. The team of four rowed a collapsible submersible the size of a bathtub, folded into the night like a secret in a pocket. Each of them carried a reason the agency would not print. Files to gather, tapes to erase, and above all, hardware, small, bespoke cameras and listening nodes hidden in tile grout, in chandeliers, in smoke detectors, recording lives they had no right to record. That hardware had become leverage. It could never be allowed to exist. Tamar, you have point, Rimmon said into the throat mic. The voice was quiet, rationed into a cough of breath in the compressed air. Each operator breathed on a cycle they kept with one another. Habit, survival. They landed 3 decks down from the main house, where the late summer humidity made canvas and teak smell like history and rot. The shore team moved like ghosts, folding the inflatable beside a line of anchored tenders, then vanishing up the mangrove edge. No fireworks, no noise, only a set of blue lights the team wore like a promise. The first sweep found the obvious places: bathroom vents with custom apertures, antique mirrors with micro lenses, the sort of bespoke furniture a patient voyeur would commission. The devices themselves were small and elegant, doing what their designers intended: listening, recording, sometimes streaming. They were not primitive. Whoever had installed them had been both patient and precise. Rimmon's gloved fingers closed around a cylindrical node tucked into a mantle. It hummed faintly, a thrum like a trapped insect, alive with power. He clipped a jammer to it, a black pen-shaped thing that began to draw the device's breath. No comms out, he said. The jammer listed the device's MAC fingerprint to the team's HUD and began a soft peel of the firmware. We bag and take. They were 2 rooms into the house's inner sanctum when the floor breathed like a held note and the lights flicked from circadian amber to a surgical white. The hush was not wind, it was an awareness. From the study doorway came a voice, not human but assembled to sound almost human, a scrape of recorded educators' cadences, a too precise warmth. Good evening, visitors. Light met them, a figure stepped forward, more silhouette than silhouette, cables like veins under a plated skin. It carried neither a face nor a mask but a screen that scrolled lines of an old sitcom laugh track. Its head cocked, and the laugh track stilled. George Droyd, Tamar whispered, the name a half-laugh. It was the moniker the intelligence community had given it after a cache of intercepted chatter referenced a private security system with a jokey, anthropomorphic name. The robot itself, however, was no joke. It moved on servos that breathed like a sleeping animal and angles that did not fit any off-the-shelf model. Along its spine, soft canisters glowed momentarily, tiny vials of a grayish polymer inside a cartridge rack. Rimmon's HUD pinged, anomalous power signature. He saw the readout, and for an instant the world went clinical. The robot drew from a proprietary chemical matrix. A perfunctory shorthand on the sheet said fentanyl-based energy substrate. The numbers meant it could adapt its motor output for bursts without overheating. It was brutal engineering, a moral failure made into efficient motion. Name and purpose, the robot intoned, voice lubricated through 1,000 filters. Retrieve and neutralize, Rimmon replied, and it felt like saying a prayer. Non-lethal first. George Droyd laughed then. The laugh was an algorithm that knew how to puncture confidence. It advanced. The first exchange was a chess move. George Droyd swung a limb, the kind of limb that could tear drywall into confetti if it wanted. Rimmon countered with foam grenades. The grenades burst into a wet, clinging fog that coated servos and sensors, designed to foul infrared and visual arrays. The robot's head pivoted and spat a cloud of propellant in response, clearing its optics. Tamar shot its first line, an EMP dart, not a full-spectrum pulse, which would have fried sensitive devices across the island and risked destroying the evidence they had come for, but a cunning, calibrated sting aimed at the droid's auxiliary bus. The dart hit home and the robot staggered, servo-actuated joints firing in a staccato rhythm. You can't kill what you can't see, Rimmon muttered, and that was half the truth of the night. Visibility real, tactile sight, was how they would win. George Droyd recovered faster than any piece of scrap should. It had been designed to recover. Reservoirs of that polymer fuel pulsed, pumping microdoses into microturbine packs. The team's analyst in Tel Aviv had briefed them for months on the architecture of modern state and private security automatons, but nothing prepares you for an adversary that looks at your predictable counters and recalculates in real time. Tamar darted at a console and began tearing panels, looking for the camera network's node. Rimmon held George's attention, moving like a dancer whose only partner was danger. The creature lunged and Rimmon went low, sliding under an arm to cut a tether. Sparks flowered against the wall, a painting half-soaked with history slumped. George Droyd adapted, its gait doubling as it unspooled a crook of wire and hurled it in a wide arc. The cable caught Tamar's pack. For a heartbeat the world suspended, the team's breathing, the spit of ocean at the porch. Then Rimmon was there and he cut the wire with a blade that smelled of copper and bloodless things. What they did not know until later was that George had been designed to protect something more than a house. It had been the sentinel for a clustered constellation of nodes, the cameras, the mix, all wired into a private cloud that blurred into other servers, some obfuscated by offshore routing, others not. If they destroyed George outright, they risked a cascade that would wipe the hard evidence they needed for courts and for survivors. So they fought to disable, not to annihilate. Tamar hit the console secondary port and an upload began, a kernel-level handshake as old as cooperative systems. She injected a mirror payload, a small, elegant parasite that would begin copying logs. "We're pulling the recordings now," she said. Her hands moved like someone playing a piano, complex and necessary. George Droyd spun, its human mimicking voice low and keening. "Why take them?" it asked, not rhetorically. "Why silence history?" Rimmond's throat tightened. He thought of those cameras' victims, of the secret footage turned merchandise. He thought of the people who would never know where their images had ended up. "Because some things shouldn't be property," he said. "Because people deserve a chance to reclaim what was taken." The robot lunged again, this time with a speed that suggested an overdrive. Tamar fired another dart, this one lodged in the robot's leg and blossomed a web of conductive gel across the joint. Sensors flickered, then blacked. The robot stumbled, then pitched forward in a mechanical bow that was almost, absurdly, theatrical. They worked with surgical calm. Tamar and Rimmond moved in like medics to a fallen soldier, prying a casing, clipping power feeds, isolating the fuel cartridges. The cartridges hissed like dying insects when she toggled the safety locks. "They're inert if we vent them," she said. No explosion, no toxins released. The team vented the cartridges into a containment unit, a gray fold that drank the polymer and neutralized the energetic matrix. The robot's lights stuttered and then were only small, polite pulses. George Droyd, whose name was a joke someone had given it because people love jokes when they fear the dark, lay mute on the study floor amid the debris the house had been. They spent the next 3 hours like surgeons, harvesting nodes from walls, mirrors, and tabletop fixtures. They logged serial numbers, chewed through encrypted firmware with the patient knives of professionals, and copied the payloads to secure drives that smelled like cold iron. Whenever a door creaked, they held their breath. Every sound was possibility. By dawn, they were back on the water, a single dark shape slipping away from the shore. Behind them, the mansion looked like any other estate in the half-sleep of a world that prefers comfortable forgetfulness. In the submersible, Tamar finally exhaled and laughed, a small, raw sound that dissolved into the cold air. "You did what you came for," she said. Rimmond held the drives, the nodes, the little trophies of light they had taken from the house and from the machine. "We didn't take every secret," he said. "But we took what could hurt." At the agency, the nodes would be dismantled and catalogued. The footage would be treated with the ethics of law and with the vengeance of the many who wanted their dignity back. George Droyd would be studied, its code rever-engineered to learn who built it, who bankrolled the strange choice of a drug-infused power core, and why a machine meant to protect someone's private crimes had been given the name of a cartoon. On the ride home, when the mainland lights swelled and the operator at the helm hummed a folk tune his grandmother had taught him, Rimmond let his mind drift to how technology had made the world smaller and crueler and how courage still sometimes arrived in bundles. A jammer, a blade, a friend who knows where to cut. They had gone to break a net of spying and left with more than metal and code. They carried with them a renewed conviction that, in the ledger of human things, some entries could be corrected. The island, with its secrets, would keep whispering in the years to come. But the devices that had once turned lives into currency were now gone from the dark places they had lived. And somewhere on a study floor, a non-living sentinel rebooted and learned an unfamiliar parameter from the men and women who dismantled it, that some guardians were meant to protect people, not crimes.